Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Martial Universe Season 6 based on novel. So let's start. The 4 gigantic tornadoes ripped across the sky like a terrorizing dragon that was made of wind. Powerful gales directly ripped out 4 enormous trails in the savage jungle that was beneath the fight. Clearly, the martial art that Feng Kang had displayed was a rather powerful soul martial art. This display of might would make even the face of a 4-yuan Nirvana stage practitioner like Mu Lin turned solemn. They knew that if they were the ones fighting Feng Kang, they might have to go all out in order to handle that attack. I may not be good at a lot of things, but I'm strong-willed and that's something nobody can take away from me. Lin Dong raised his head and looked at the 4 gigantic palm-like tornadoes. With a loud chuckle, his hand seal changed with a lightning speed. Following which, 5 black-colored beams of light shot out from his body in an instant. Congeal. As the light beams congealed, they materialized into 5 ancient and huge fingers in the twinkling of an eye. Then, under numerous attentive gazes, the fingers lined up in a straight line and became a big hand that was emitting ancient and savage aura. However, this time around, this big hand was different from the previous one. It was of a dark grayish color, and there was an additional trace of mysteriousness to it. As the big hand formed, the dimension of nothingness exploded. A faintly discernible shadow appeared, and an extremely powerful aura of might began to pervade the air. Soul martial art. Numerous gazes were directed at the shadow that came out of the dimension of nothingness, and cries of surprise could be heard continuously. The onlookers could sense that the martial art Lin Dong had just displayed was an extremely powerful soul martial art. Great desolate imprisoning heavenly hand, break it. Lin Dong's facial expression was intense. As he abruptly clenched his fist, the shadow that came out of the dimension of nothingness waved its hand at this moment as well. Immediately, the dark grayish big hand whizzed across the air, creating violent vibrations through the airspace that it had whizzed past. Finally, under numerous attentive gazes, the hand landed ferociously onto the palm that was made up of 4 yuan power-filled tornadoes. Rumble. When the collision took place, it was as if the entire heaven and earth trembled. Waves of ear-splitting rumble resounded frantically throughout the area. Those practitioners who were near to the battleground were directly affected by the waves of rumble. Immediately, their faces turned pale white, and they retreated quickly from the area. I want to see how many times you can withstand my attack. When the tornado's palm was blocked, Feng Kang's facial expression grew increasingly fierce. However, a tinge of solemnness began to develop behind that fierce facial expression. His strength was supposed to surpass Lin Dong's, and he even displayed such powerful soul martial art, and yet he still failed to obtain an advantageous position steadily. No matter what, he did not dare to underestimate Lin Dong's strength anymore. Otherwise, he would be the one who failed miserably in this battle. Clearly, Feng Kang would not allow this to happen. As such, when he saw his tornado's palm was blocked, he took a step forward and waves of vigorous yuan power gushed out from his body. Changing his hand seal, he formed another 4 gigantic tornadoes that swept towards Lin Dong with a much fiercer poise. The more attacks you launch at me, the more I shall block them. Facing such wild and torrential attacks from Feng Kang, Lin Dong's eyes were burning with battle fury as well. As he flipped his hand, waves of fusion force gushed out from his body continuously. The waves of fusion force eventually materialized into a big hand that blasted towards the tornado's palm with an earth-shattering force. Boom, boom, boom. Horrifying and wild collisions continued to take place in the sky. Many onlookers' facial expression gradually turned grim when they saw the energy waves that swept across the sky. Usually, this kind of powerful soul martial art consumed an astonishing amount of yuan power. Currently, the battle between these two individuals had reached its climax. Whoever could not sustain and give up first, he would be devoured by his opponent's formidable attack immediately. From a different perspective, Feng Kang had a huge advantage in this kind of direct confrontation. After all, he was a 4-yuan nirvana stage practitioner, which was one level higher than Lin Dong. His mastery of yuan power was much more refined than Lin Dong's as well. If this battle of attrition continued, Lin Dong would fall into a disadvantageous position. Of course, that was usually the case. However, after Lin Dong displayed that kind of terrifying powers that far exceeded a 3-yuan nirvana stage practitioner was capable of, no one would consider him under the usual case. As the battle between Lin Dong and Feng Kang reached its climax, on the other side, the battle between Little Flame and Meng Lai had been fierce and violent all the way since it started. The metal pole and giant hammer were being brandished in the air. Every movement possessed terrifying power that was enough to split open mountains and shatter the earth. It was an exceptionally horrifying sight to behold. Boom! Two muscular figures collided against each other ruthlessly, before visible energy ripples swept out from the collision point. Beneath them, the savaged huge jungle blew up into nothing but dust and became a huge piece of flat land. Both figures were knocked back by a violent energy in a sorry state and landed fiercely on the ground, creating a deep and 100-feet-long ground trail. P2E. Meng Lai leapt up from the ground with a vicious look on his face, and then spat out a mouthful of blood. Faint waves of pain could be felt on his void. In the previous exchange, his body had taken more than 10 brutal blows from Little Flame. Naturally, Little Flame also received more than 10 blows from him at the same time. However, what pissed Meng Lai off was that Little Martin's body was terrifyingly tough. The degree of the damage done by Meng Lai's attacks on Little Flame's body did not reach the former's expectation. Since you dare to play with Daddy, Daddy will play with you until you die. The viciousness on Meng Lai's face was getting obvious. Apparently, he was not happy to be forced by Little Flame into this state. Licking his lips with his scarlet tongue, Meng Lai suddenly opened up his feet and bent his body slightly forward. His muscle began to vibrate with a weird arc. At the same time, impetuous waves of energy extended outward from his feet. At this moment, the huge piece of land surrounding him began to tremble violently. The trembling of the ground became increasingly violent. Eventually, cracks and crevices started to form and extend around Meng Lai's body. At that moment, it looked as if an earthquake was occurring. Great seismic wave. Meng Lai took a step forward and a callous roar came out of his throat. Following which, he bent over his body and landed a ferocious punch on the ground ahead of him. Bang! The piece of land where he landed his punch began to rupture, and an enormous crevice formed under his fist and tore through the ground with a lightning speed, causing numerous gigantic and tall trees to collapse on the way. The speed of the crevice extension was extremely fast. In a blink of an eye, the crevice reached within 10 meters of Little Flame. Then, the countless crushed stones in the crevice began to give off a dreadful energy wave. At this moment, the crushed stones materialized into a huge python that lunged towards Little Flame's chest with an astonishing speed. Bang! A deep and low sound resounded through the air, and Little Flame's muscular body shot backward, snapping hundreds of gigantic trees on his way, and whipping up sand and stones into the air. Heh! Upon seeing this, a sinister smirk appeared on Meng Lai's callous face. However, just as the smirk appeared on his face, his eye pupils began to dilate. All he could see was a black figure surged outward from where Little Flame had landed. This sight would cause one to tremble with fear. Humph, a cockroach that can't be killed. After Meng Lai saw Little Flame was not severely injured by his powerful attack, the former's facial expression turned grim. Following which, he bent over his body and bombarded the ground with fist again. Another crevice erupted and extended through the ground like a thick black line, which surged towards the incoming figure. Bang! As the ground split open, a huge, crushed rocks-made python that was engulfed by horrifying energy lunged at Little Flame. However, this time around, as the huge python lunged out, the black figure swiped out an enormous black tiger paw. The tiger paw was emitting a kind of dreadful aura, and it eventually smacked the huge python with one swipe. Boom! A formidable force erupted from the tiger paw, and the crushed rocks-made python exploded immediately. What? Upon seeing this scene, Meng Lai's facial expression changed drastically. And before Meng Lai could do anything, that black figure surged forward and Little Flame appeared in his sight. However, at this point of time, Little Flame's arms had been transformed into two black-colored tiger limbs. The wiggling veins on those tiger limbs looked like young dragons, giving off a frightening savage energy at the same time. This is... Meng Lai's eye pupils shrunk when he saw the two real tiger claws. However, before he could say anything, Little Flame clenched his tiger paws while his eyes were surging with a scarlet glow. Like a legitimate black tiger that was ripping its prey's heart, Little Flame's paw bombarded Meng Lai's chest without any mercy. Clang! A metallic sound rang through the air. Meng Lai's chest actually caved in from that attack. Luckily, he possessed the 4-yuan Nirvana stade's Nirvana golden body, otherwise, his heart would have been ripped out by Little Flame's paw. However, even though Meng Lai's Nirvana golden body was able to block Little Flame's abnormally powerful punch, his body still flew backward. Under numerous astonished gazes, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The entire area broke out into an uproar. The battle between Little Flame and Meng Lai was rather gory. Both of their punches landed precisely on each other's body. Everyone knew that if this kind of punch landed on someone else, his or her body would explode into a blood mist. That Lin Yang is quite brutal. When Mu Lin and his counterparts saw Meng Lai, who was well known for his savagery, fell into a disadvantageous position in his death battle against Little Flame, they could not help but suck in a deep breath of cold air. Their facial expressions grew exceptionally solemn. Now, they finally discovered that each individual of the Lin Dong trio was comparable to a 4-yuan Nirvana stage practitioner. In this way, they are equivalent to 3 4-yuan Nirvana stage practitioners. This kind of lineup and strength was much more powerful than those super empires. This discovery made the smiles on Mu Lin and his counterparts' faces somewhat bitter. Even though they were not considered really outstanding among the super empires, their foundation was still much more stronger as compared to other empires. However, at the end of the day, these 3 practitioners who came from a low-ranked empire still surpassed them. Even if they were sanguine about this disparity, they still held an unbalanced impression of the situation in their hearts. That Luo Tong is so miserable, Mu Hanyu suddenly spoke in a soft voice. Mu Lin laughed bitterly and looked at the distant forest. Sounds of trees collapsing could be heard constantly. He could see that one figure was beaten up like a punching bag. That figure was Luo Tong from the Wind Cloud Empire. He was also a 4 Nirvana stage practitioner, and yet, he completely lost his ability to fight back in the hands of the devilish handsome young man. His opponent is sick in the mind. Mu Lin heaved a sigh. The odds of Wind Cloud Empire winning this battle seemed to be lower and lower. That was because the sudden outburst of powers from Lin Dong's camp was rather frightening. Feng Kang is also being pinned down by Lin Dong. 2 of them raised their heads and looked at the distant sky. The battle over there was extremely intense. However, even though Feng Kang had displayed his soul martial art, he still did not show any sign of stopping Lin Dong. When their soul martial arts collided, it even seemed that Lin Dong had the upper hand over Feng Kang. However, Mu Hanyue's beautiful eyes flickered and she spoke with a gentle voice, Feng Kang still has his trump card. Mu Lin's facial expression slightly changed and nodded his head. Until now, Feng Kang had not used the heavenly soul treasure that he had obtained during the auction. If the heavenly soul treasure's power was unleashed, Lin Dong might not be able to withstand it. Bang! In the sky, the ancient huge fingers once again detonated the 4 tornado palms that were incoming from various crafty angles. Violent shock wave sent Lin Dong and Feng Kang flying off for more than a few hundred meters. Following which, they stabilized their bodies in the sky with a hastened breathing. At this moment, both of their faces were pale white. It appeared that even with their strength, they could not handle the heavy exhaustion from the previous exchange of blows. Feng Kang wiped off the blood stain on the corners of his mouth. With a sinister look on his face, he gazed in the direction of Meng Lai. The corners of his eyes twitched and spoke with a hoarse voice. I didn't expect all of you to conceal your capabilities to such extent. It doesn't feel good to kick an iron plate, right? Lin Dong sneered while stretching his numb hands. It's indeed slightly troublesome, but it's an overestimation to call yourself an iron plate. Feng Kang's mouth curled and traces of chilliness seeped out from his eyes. Soon after, he reached his palm and slowly said, Initially I still thought I would not need to use it. However, I could no longer stand the fact that you're still alive. Therefore, no matter how troublesome you are, I must take your life today. Ruthlessness flashed upon Feng Kang's face abruptly. Immediately, he clenched his fist and a heaven-covering black glow gushed out from it. Under numerous astonished gazes, a black-colored metal seal appeared. Feng Kang finally could not help but unleash his trump card, the heavenly soul treasure. Black light swept across the skies as a black palm-sized steel seal suddenly hovered above Feng Kang's palm. Black Dragon Sky Roaring Seal. The heavenly soul treasure from the auction house was finally revealed by Feng Kang. Seems like he has finally brought it out. A distance away, Mu Lin and the rest watched this scene with solemn expressions. Even though the battle was previously stuck in a stalemate, none of them dared to draw to a conclusion too early. Everyone knew that the battle was not over until Feng Kang used his heavenly soul treasure. However, when they saw Feng Kang take out his heavenly soul treasure, they also felt a complicated feeling surface in their hearts. Even though Lin Dong was merely at the 3 yuan nirvana stage, he was able to force Feng Kang, a peak 4 yuan nirvana stage practitioner, into such a sorry state, and even forced the latter to use his final killing move. Even they themselves were not sure of accomplishing such a feat. This fellow also has the qualifications to possess a heaven nirvana seal. This group has truly hidden their strength, Mu Lin bitterly laughed as he said. Even though he had never looked down on Lin Dong's group, he had no choice but to admit that he had underestimated them. If they can defeat the Wind Cloud Empire, they will probably shock the entire core zone. Mu Hanue's expression was somewhat complicated. To defeat a super empire with the resources of a low-rank empire. In her opinion, this was perhaps a rare occasion that would occur once every 100 years. However, such an event was now playing out clearly in front of her eyes. At this moment, even though she was a famed ice queen, she could not help but exclaim in shock. Even though the Wind Cloud Empire is not considered as an elite amongst the super empires, they are no pushovers. If Lin Dong can defeat them, shocking the entire core region will not be strange at all. Mu Lin lifted his head, staring unblinkingly at the sky as he softly said, Of course. It still depends on whether he can withstand Feng Kang's next attack. The might of a heavenly soul treasures must not be underestimated. In mid-air, black light slowly spread out. In fact, it seemed like even the dark red night sky was dyed red by this alarming power. It was hard to imagine that this astonishing scene was caused by a mere black palm-sized steel seal. Lin Dong's expression turned solemn the instant that black steel seal appeared. He could feel an extremely dangerous sensation from it. A soul treasure that was worth tens of millions of nirvana pills. Its powers allowed its user to challenge those who had a higher cultivation stage than himself. Since Feng Kang's strength was already above Lin Dong's, with the addition of this heavenly soul treasure, one could only imagine the perilous situation that Lin Dong was in. Originally, I did not plan to use it. However, you have truly exceeded my expectations. Feng Kang's face was grim. He stared hideously at Lin Dong, rich killing intent in his eyes. Consider it a blessing to die to my heavenly soul treasure. Feng Kang suddenly stepped forward. Evidently, he did not want to give Lin Dong any opportunity to resist. As he clenched his fist, the yuan power within his body howled forth, continuously pouring into that black steel seal in his palm. Buzz. As yuan power gushed in, a buzzing sound suddenly erupted from that black steel seal. Meanwhile, the crouching black dragon carved on the black seal slowly opened its tightly shut eyes. Buzz. The instant that dragon opened its eyes, a startling shockwave violently swept Froth. Faintly, it seemed like storm clouds had begun gathering in the sky. Black dragon howl. Feng Kang's expression was sinister, sneering as he stared coldly at the now grim-faced Lin Dong. With a sudden change of hand seals, the black dragon's mouth abruptly opened. In the next instant, a vigorous and ancient dragon roar, that seemed to descend from the 9 heavens, erupted. Roar. A black sound wave mixed with a destructive shockwave manically swept forth from the dragon's mouth. As the sound wave swept past, the forest below was completely blown apart. In fact, even the giant trees were shattered into tiny wooden shrapnels before they exploded into dust with a loud bang. The sound wave leveled an entire forest as it swept out. To think that the might of a heavenly soul treasure was actually this terrifying. Lin Dong's pupils shrunk as he watched the black sound wave swarming towards him from every direction. His figure rapidly retreated as his hand once again reached forward. An ancient pitch-black hand materialized and violently swiped at the sound wave. Humph! You overestimate yourself. When he saw this sight, Feng Kang disdainfully sneered. Even though Lin Dong's soul martial arts was powerful, his current attack originated from a heavenly soul treasure, and was powered by his 4 yuan nirvana stage strength. How could Lin Dong stop it so easily? Feng Kang's sneer was not without reason. The instant the large ancient hand made contact with the black sound wave, it trembled violently. It seemed as if the black sound wave was so sharp that it was even able to slice apart energy. As the sound wave flashed past, it directly sliced apart the large ancient hand. When he saw his giant hand being sliced apart by the black sound wave, Lin Dong's pupils abruptly shrunk. This was the first time he had seen his great desolate imprisoning heavenly hand being broken so easily. Is a heavenly soul treasure so frighteningly powerful? Swoosh swoosh. The black sound wave easily crushed the giant hand before once again swarming towards Lin Dong. The black sound wave was just like a grim reaper's scythe, completely unstoppable. Lin Dong, let me see what else you can do. When he saw that Lin Dong was about to be engulfed by the black sound wave, Feng Kang could not help but laugh heartily. His laughter was extremely sinister. Huff! Lin Dong took in a deep breath. The black sound wave reflected in his pupils rapidly growing larger. In the next instant, his hand seals gently changed as the rich yuan power surrounding him gradually calmed down, and a faint green light slowly seeped out of his body. No matter how you struggle, it's futile. When he saw this, Feng Kang maliciously chuckled. As he clenched his fist, the black sound wave's speed increased as it flew towards Lin Dong. Green heaven materialized dragon nose, scale shield. As the black sound wave flashed by, Lin Dong's eyes suddenly focused as a green glow burst out, transforming into a shield of green scales in front of him. The shield was approximately half a meter wide, and there was a faint green dragon symbol floating on it. Meanwhile, a light and peculiar undulation spread outwards from it. This sound wave can slice apart the nirvana golden body of a 4-yuan nirvana stage practitioner. You actually dare defend against it head-on. You must be courting death. When Feng Kang saw Lin Dong chose to defend against the black sound wave instead of dodging, he immediately released a sinister laughter. Clang clang clang. However, just as an evil grin appeared on his face, the black sound wave viciously slammed against the green scale shield. Instantly, countless resplendent sparks erupted. However, contrary to Feng Kang's expectations, the shield was not easily sliced apart. Instead, the Lin Dong's green scale shield managed to withstand the incomparably sharp sound wave. How is this possible? When he saw this sight, not only did Feng Kang's expression change drastically, even Mu Lin and the rest, who had been silently observing, were startled as they exclaimed in shock. All of them could clearly feel just how terrifyingly the black sound wave was. However, they had never imagined that Lin Dong was actually able to withstand it. Kai Kai. As sparks exploded, Lin Dong's body was forcibly pushed backwards. However, since he had the protection of his green scale shield, the black sound wave did not cause any fatal damage to him. After releasing its destructive power, the black sound wave seemingly filled the skies gradually began to fade before they disappeared in front of the green scale shield. When the final bit of black sound wave disappeared, Lin Dong's figure slowly came to a stop. The already battered green scale shield exploded, revealing Lin Dong, who was standing behind it. However, there were now bloody red lines on his arm. Fresh blood flowed down his arm, a pretty alarming sight. Evidently, even though the dragon transformation art was able to allow Lin Dong to block the powerful attack that could kill a 4-yuan nirvana stage practitioner, he still had to pay a price. A heavenly soul treasure is indeed troublesome. Lin Dong swung his blood-soaked arm as an endless cold surged in his eyes. Don't celebrate too early. I will slowly let you taste the might of a heavenly soul treasure. I have said this before. I will make you suffer till you beg for your own death. Therefore, I will not let you die so easily. Feng Kang maliciously chuckled. Promptly, his hand seals suddenly changed as streams of rich yuan power continuously gushed into the black steel seal. Meanwhile, the body of the crouching mini black dragon gradually began to light up, the black scales on its body becoming clearer and clearer. Black dragon sky roaring seal, dragon soul appear. Surging black light suddenly burst out from within the black steel seal. Amidst the massive black light, the crouching black dragon on the steel seal actually flew out as its mini body started to swell at an alarming rate. Roar! A deep dragon roar ricocheted across the skies. The dragon roar contained the authority of a true dragon, causing the yuan power in the area to rage vigorously. A black dragon soared into the sky as storm clouds gathered, a world-shaking sight. At this moment, the power of the heavenly soul treasure had been completely displayed. Dark clouds churned in the sky, blotting out the sky. Even the originally dark red sky became overcast at this moment. Boom! The black dragon entered the storm clouds. Occasionally, it was possible to see an enormous body flashing past when the clouds flipped. The icy cold ancient aura of its seemingly metallic body emitted a ripple that caused one to feel fearful in one's heart. Countless number of eyes contained some shock as they looked at the storm clouds that had gathered in the sky. They could vaguely see an enormous being rolling within. That kind of special ripple and pressure caused even Mu Lin and the other experts, who had stepped into the 4-yuan nirvana stage, to feel some palpitations within their hearts. There is an actual dragon's soul within the black dragon sky roaring seal. Mu Hanyu covered her red lips with her hands and exclaimed with shock. It should be an incomplete dragon's soul. Mu Lin's expression was solemn as he said, however, it is still extremely powerful. With this heavenly soul treasure, Feng Kang would be hard-pressed to find an opponent who could match him within the 4-yuan nirvana stage. I'm afraid that things are looking bad for Lin Dong this time around. Boom. While the dark clouds in the sky rolled and the black dragon loomed, two fierce beast-like figures had also suddenly collided violently against each other at another corner. A deep explosion sounded. Fierce and ruthless fists violently landed on each other's bodies. The two bodies trembled intensely before they finally flew backwards with a loud bang. Fresh blood scattered, causing the place to appear extremely bloody. Little Flame's foot heavily slammed onto the ground. Numerous crack lines spread out from under it. The surface of his body vaguely possessed some flickering black glow. Only then did he manage to resolve the enormous force that had invaded into his body. Little Flame took a few hurried breaths. His scarlet eyes was filled with a fierce evilness as he stared at the other party, whose body was similarly covered with traces of blood. He is really not simple. Meng Lai rubbed away the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. After which, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He parted his mouth in a manner that was filled with hostility, as he stared at Little Flame in front of him. Those eyes on that strong body of his dilated slightly. Clearly, he did not expect that he would be forced by Little Flame till such a miserable state. You might be able to entangle the old me, but Lin Dong appears to be unable to last for long. Meng Lai raised his head, glanced at the sky that was covered with dark clouds, and laughed in a sinister manner. From the looks of it, Feng Kang had clearly used the heavenly soul treasure that he had obtained. Since he had even taken this thing out, it was likely that the victor of that battle would have already been determined regardless of how troublesome dealing with Lin Dong was. Lin Dong can be considered as capable since he was able to force Feng Kang to use the heavenly soul treasure. But everything will end now. Little Flame's scarlet eyes glanced at the sky. After which, he saw Lin Dong's somewhat miserable appearance, with blood flowing out from the latter's hands. However, Little Flame did not reveal any panic, something beyond Meng Li's expectation. Instead, he had once again turned around. Those eyes that were staring at him were increasingly bloodthirsty. Big brother will not lose this easily, Little Flame's voice was a little hoarse. However, there was a conviction in his tone that cannot be described by words. A fool who attempts to deceive himself and others. Meng Lai laughed furiously. My task is to finish you off. Little Flame leaned his body slightly forward. A monstrous killing intent surged out, appearing just like a prehistoric wild beast that was about to attack. Finish me off. I will let you witness the strongest martial arts within my wind cloud empire. Meng Lai laughed towards the sky. Immediately, he licked the blood on his face. The cruelty and fierceness in his eyes instantly became extremely dense. He took a step forward and changed the seal formed by his hand. An extremely frightening fluctuation was suddenly unleashed from within his body. Emperor right. A low and deep roar that was permeated with a dense desire to kill was emitted from within Meng Lai's throat. That fluctuation became even more intense, as the ground subsequently shook once again. The momentum was several times stronger when compared to before. Surging yuan power wrapped around Meng Lai's body. While his hand seal changed, numerous strange deep yellow-colored vapor began to suddenly seep out from underground. After which, it twined upwards, followed his skin, and entered his body. Creak! Meng Lai's body suddenly began to swell. His muscles were strengthened while his veins pulsed, appearing just like a dragon. Within a short instant, not only had Meng Lai's body swelled to double his size, but even his aura had become exceptionally powerful. This is my true fighting strength. Next, I will break every bone in your body. Meng Lai raised his head and parted his mouth to give Little Flame a cruel smile. His foot suddenly stepped forward and his body disappeared at that instant. When it next appeared, his body was already in front of Little Flame. Immediately, it gathered a fist wind that contained a terrifying strength, as it directly tore through the air and ruthlessly smashed towards Little Flame's heart. Boom! Little Flame's arms once again transformed into tiger claws, as they crossed each other in front of him. He forcefully received this fierce punch from Meng Lai. After which, his body flew backwards. A gigantic tree was blasted into dust in the process. Swoosh! Having gained the upper hand with the single punch, Meng Lai did not pause even a little. His body rushed out before another heavy punch, that could seriously injure a 4-yuan nirvana expert, erupted from him. Boom! The black-colored tiger claw was extended out. It forcefully grabbed the metallic punch that had erupted. Little Flame's eyes were scarlet, as his throat suddenly emitted a tiger roar. His enormous body also began to reveal a drastic change. Within a short instant, it had transformed into a fighting machine with a human body and a tiger head. You are actually a demonic beast. This scene directly caused Meng Lai's expression to abruptly change. Only at this moment did he understand why Little Flame's physical body was actually this frighteningly strong. Roar! The tiger roar shakes the forest. After releasing his beast form, Little Flame's fighting strength had clearly soared at a shocking rate. His strength, speed, reaction etc. were all comparable to Meng Lai after the latter had used the Emperor Rite. The strength surged and churned within Little Flame's body. He clenched his tiger claw tightly and smashed it out with a lightning speed. The wild and violent sharp fist wind directly collided with Meng Lai's attack. Boom boom boom. A circular shocking wind swept apart, and those surrounding gigantic trees burst apart upon contact. The two of them had currently unleashed their fighting strength to the limit. The bloodiness from the pure physical fight was extremely thrilling for anyone watching it. Rumble. The dark clouds churned in the sky. A paleness gradually surfaced on Feng Kang's face upon seeing this. However, there was an even greater amount of wild and savage expression. He was aware that he would definitely be able to end this battle that had frustrated him with this attack. Kill. Feng Kang's finger suddenly pointed towards Lin Dong. An icy cold cry that caused the surrounding temperature to fall was suddenly emitted. Bang! The dark clouds shook when this killing cry sounded. An incredibly large black shadow finally rushed out violently, as an enormous black dragon extended its icy cool ancient metallic body. It appeared in front of everyone's eyes in a manner that shocked one's eyes. The air had crumbled and exploded under the roar of the dragon. Those forests below directly crumbled at this moment. An enormous pit had appeared within the short blink of an eye. Everyone's faces were completely pale in the face of the black dragon's attack. This kind of strength was not something that they, who were 3 or 4 yuan nirvana stage experts, could endure. Crack! The clothes on Lin Dong's body were ripped by the frightening wind pressure that was transmitted across space. Even with his powerful physical body, Lin Dong still felt a kind of piercing pain. He was aware that this attack by Feng Kang was truly a lethal one. Huff! A deep breath followed Lin Dong's throat as it was exhaled. Soon after, his eyes were slowly shut in front of the many stunned gazes. In the face of this shocking attack by Feng Kang, the current Lin Dong had actually gave up all forms of defense. That strength! While everyone was at a loss because of his action, Lin Dong's mind was scanning over the interior of his body with lightning-like speed. It appeared as though he was searching for something. Lin Dong's mind flashed through his body like a thunderbolt. Finally, it entered his dantian. A cluster of green-colored glow appeared. Within that green glow was a creeping green dragon. It meandered and held its body close together. A kind of shock pressure spread from it. This was the heavenly dragon aura that Qing Ji had left in his body back then. However, Lin Dong was only able to absorb this kind of frightening heavenly dragon aura a little at a time, and he was unable to refine it. However, he currently needed to activate some of this strength now. Although he would have to pay a price, he remained unfazed. I need you. Lin Dong's mind appeared to have transformed into an invisible large hand as it grabbed onto the green light. Sizzle. Those tightly shut eyes of Lin Dong were suddenly opened at this moment. After which, he spread his hands and roared towards the sky. Roar. The thing that was emitted from Lin Dong's mouth was not just a mere roar. Instead, it was a clear dragon's roar. Under this dragon roar, that black dragon, which had rushed over, actually trembled violently. However, those dragon eyes that were without any intelligence, also revealed a terror that originated from deep within its soul. You will not be able to take my life. Lin Dong laughed out loud towards the sky as he seemed a little maniacal. Green-colored glow swept out from his body in all directions, before finally transforming into an illusionary large green-colored dragon in front of countless number of gazes. This is a dragon's soul. Mu Lin and the rest were stunned as they watched the enormous green-colored dragon that had appeared. Regardless of whether one looked at it from its aura or the ripple that was formed, this green dragon definitely surpassed the black dragon. Could it be that this Lin Dong actually possessed a real dragon's soul? Bang! The large green dragon wrapped around Lin Dong's body, before shooting out in front of the countless number of shocked and horrified eyes. Finally, it directly collided violently with the black dragon under these countless pairs of shocked eyes. This collision was truly earth-shaking. This video will end here.